All right, hello and welcome to the Metric Insights version 5 webinar. Our hosts today are Adam Shamuel, that's me. I'm an account executive for Metric Insights, and sitting next to me is Louis Bedard.
Good day, everyone.
Our head of sales engineering. Just so everyone knows, the lines are muted, so you won't be able to speak. Please type any questions you might have into the Q&A window, and we will address them at the end of the webinar. So today's agenda is we'll be covering the current state of business intelligence, go through the solution point and what Metric Insights offers, and then review the architecture before Louis will jump into a live demo of the product. After that, we will have about 20 minutes or so for questions and answers. So if you look at business intelligence and what's delivered today, the promise is that you have all this information, you have all of this data, and your business users, your end users, will make data-driven decisions based on the information that you provide them. The problem is that business intelligence comes up with these three big problems that kind of stop your end users from utilizing it as fully as you'd like. Those three problems are federated systems. So you'll have different departments within the company using different products such as Tableau or Click, Salesforce for the sales team, so on and so forth. The tools force you to play hide and seek with the insights that you've delivered. So if I'm an IT user and I need to find out something about finance information, I have to go log in, find a Click dashboard, go into the dashboard, and then find the specific filter values that'll then surface that insight that I'm supposed to be looking for. And that leads to information overload. If I sign onto a dashboard and there's one number, it's easy enough to look at. But if there's 100 numbers dimensioned by 100 slices or 1,000 slices, it's just too much information as an end user to take in on a daily or even weekly basis. And so what ends up happening is that 14 billion a year is spent on business intelligence in the US, but you only end up having about 10% of the content that you've built for your users actually being consumed. So the result is that BI delivers a broken promise. It's not complete. And that's where Metric Insights steps in. So we offer three distinct points that help address those problems we saw earlier. So for the federated systems issue, we have a consolidated portal. Metric Insights allows you to pull in content from any BI tool, any data source, put it in one spot, and allow your users to access all of that information. We have enterprise distribution tools. So that instead of forcing users to log in and look for information, we will push it out to them on a daily, on a weekly, on a monthly basis that can be set up by one person for many. And then the final and key point is anomaly detection. So when you've got thousands or tens of thousands of dimension values, Metric Insights will find the ones that are having issues and problems and push those out to your end users. In terms of how Metric Insights works, at the bottom of that right-hand image, you'll see a typical BI stack. A little bit simplistic, but it gets the point across. So you have your data sources, a warehouse, and then some BI tools for dashboarding that information. We have a plugin architecture layer that pulls in information from all of those different sources. We then put that into our KPI management layer, which is that portal interface. We have anomaly detection on all of these different data sets or data streams that are being pulled into the system. And then once something is detected or on a fixed schedule, we distribute it out to your end users. So that gives you a basic overview of Metric Insights and why we exist. Now I'll hand it over to my esteemed colleague, Louis, to give you guys the product demo.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you. Great introduction. Nice to meet you all. It's a pleasure to thank you for your time today listening to this demo. So for today's agenda for the demo, what we'd like to do is we'll be reviewing the three pillars of the platform and also discuss the added functionality in our 5.0 dataset release, concluding this with our exception reporting and mobile offering. So there are three pillars of the product today, and we'll take a look at them right now. So the first pillar of the product is meant as a one-stop shop for your users to easily find what they're looking for and from any system inside of your company. As an example, we see a lot of our customers that have multiple business intelligence applications, multiple databases, and even third-party system, and need a place to maintain all of their data. So as you can see here on the screen, Metric Insights has a tile-based interface where you see metrics, reports, and even external report taken from any system, so multiple different systems that we support, and that can be easily accessed by each and every end users. So if a users come in the system as an example and would like to search for particular content, you can go in the show all tile here and use our search engine to see all the tiles that meets a specific search criteria, very simply. So now going back to my favorite digest, my favorite folder. So what you see here on the left-hand side of the screen are different categories. Right now, I am an administrator in the system, so I have access to all the different categories built on this particular demo instance. However, a typical end user will come into the system and will have access to only specific categories that pertain to their own business unit. So as an example, someone in sales and marketing would see those two folders. And within those folders, they would have filtered views of their data. So someone representing the East Coast would only see East Coast data, and someone for the West, obviously, seeing West Coast data. And when you open a particular categories or particular folder here, you can highlight a tile like this particular metrics here with a yellow star. And when you highlight them with the yellow star, they become part of my favorite folder content. So that, in essence, is what gives you your own curated list of metrics, reports, and KPIs that you have access to and that you want to make yourself available to. So that could be administered by each and every individual end users, or can also be centrally administered. So that's the first pillar of the platform. Our second pillar is distribution. So what we're looking at right now is our distribution layer that ensure that each and every users only receive the data that they need, when they need it, on the right device, without having to do anything. So what we're looking at right now is a digest email that reflects what changed in my favorite folder that I should be paying attention to. So this particular example here shows my top mover by absolute percentage changes, shows me the summary of my key KPIs here, to all the metric summaries and how much they changed compared to the previous day. And then down this particular email digest, I see report, I see business intelligence visualization. This particular dashboard here is generated an alert, so you see the alert being shown below the screen, and so on. So if I keep scrolling down, you see visualization coming from multiple different business intelligence tools. So the premise behind this digest email is that in a minute or so, users have access to all the key elements and the key information that they care about, no matter what data sources are coming from, and being easily available to you. And you don't have to log in into any additional system to visualize and to see this information. So that moves us down to the third pillar of the application, which is the anomaly detection / alerting. So in this email, all the links are live. So if I go back and want to evaluate my daily sales for Canada, clicking on this now brings me back to the Metric Insights application. So what we're looking at right now is what we call a metric, which is a time series data point. In this case, we're looking at 4 weeks worth of data. The first thing you're noticing here is that this particular data point and this particular data points here generated an alert. The way we're doing this is that if I look at my statistical view of my data here, you're seeing those two data points are actually data points that falls outside of the standard deviation of my moving average. And we're able to find those data points because when we're loading data in the KPI warehouse that Adam was talking about, we're not just loading current values of your data point, but we're also loading calculating the percentage changes from the previous data point, the moving averages, the minimum, the maximum, etc. So therefore, we're doing this for all the data points loaded in the platform. If I look at the past 9 months worth of data, you can see where all the anomalies were detected across this particular KPI. And this is done for all the different dimensional values that I have. So that is the first point, this anomaly detection. We're also able to create any sets of rules to generate alerts with metric insights. So if I take a look at my alerting rules engine here, you can create any sets of rules on your data. So for us, a rule to generate an alert could be as basic as creating a rule against a fixed value or even against a target. But you can also compare data points to a prior value, or even better, to an averages of prior values, where you may want to compare your Monday to Mondays, Saturday to Saturdays, or even January to January of last year, things of that nature. The 4-point bullet point here that we can do as well is a volatility level, where you may want to alert someone that where data points falls between 1 to 2 standard deviation, and then alert your managers your data points fall between 2 to 3 standard deviation, things of that nature. When you start to combine those KPI alerting rules together, you can create what we call Six Sigma type of alerting. And then after that, obviously, this alert rule you just created could be shared for the entire public, so for users who have access to this metric, or keep it to yourself. So that is the alerting aspect of our product. Other things I'd like to mention while we're looking at this charts here is to discuss our collaboration features. It's highlighted here in 2 ways. The first way is this black line that we see in the middle of the screen that notifies an event. So an event for us here would be where a data point, has been a particular event happen, and you want to perhaps notify multiple different KPIs on top of this particular event. So in this case here, the outage of my website in Canada is not only affecting my daily sales, but can also affect the inventory of my product, can also affect my forecast, my profits, etc. So it's possible to overlay an event across multiple sets of KPIs. The second part of our collaboration feature here is an annotation. So in this particular example here, I annotated the data point to say that there was an outage on the previous day, and then people have the chance to collaborate and to add additional comments to this particular data points, ensuring a conversation on these data points that are being stored in the KPI warehouse, and going back in time, those annotations will be kept on top of this particular points here. So that's for our collaboration feature. Last thing that I'd like to mention as well is the ability for us to look at the variation, if you may, of this particular KPI here. And in this particular examples here, this particular KPI exhibited this particular variation, and then we can see what other metrics could have been impacted by this particular KPI. Now, knowing my demo well, I know that my website visit in Canada has fluctuated during this period of time, and when my website went down, it definitely affected my sales. So in this case, we can see that there's a correlation pattern that is happening in the variation of this KPI. Now, let's go back to the home screen and take a look at our main 5.0 main features, which is our data sets. So if I go under my content tab here, I have a new element called views. By selecting my views here, now what I see is all the views that are made available to me. We will create a few of them together. Before I do that, I'd like to discuss our data sets in the KPI warehouse, the basic elements of our KPI warehouse. So what we just took a look at is our metrics, which was our time series data, automated anomaly detection. Also, we have the ability to create report, which is really just a depiction of any data points that you have along with graph and charts. Finally, as you saw on my home screen, we also have the ability to take visualization from business intelligence tools and import them into metric insights, which are then being visible into either the digest email or the alerts that we're sending out. The new elements in our data, in our system, is the data sets and the views, which can be snapshotted from any particular data sources, any data source, I should say, and it becomes a building blocks for metrics and reports. So talking about data sets, the purpose of the data set is twofold. The first one is to provide an abstraction layers for administrators and power users to load data, and then to give access to users to create their own filtered view of the data in order to create metrics and report. And this is done by using NoSQL with dynamic filtering. The second, as I just said, here is to provide the exception and the change views of these data points. So let's go take a look on the product. But before I do that, forgetting one thing here, talking about the user's map. So it's also possible to put on top of those data sets a user's map to restrict the user's data set to specific values. So our example here shows a large data set that has been extracted from many data sources. Then you can apply a user set to restrict the user's view of this data point. So then each and every personalized data set view allows users to create dynamically generated reports based on the view that they have access to. So let's go back to the product now. So as I mentioned before, going into my content and selecting my views, these are the particular views that I have recently have access to. If I go to my data set tab here, now at this point, what I'd like to do is to select one of those data sets and start to create a view for us together. So this is our data set viewer. Pretty straightforward. On the left-hand side, you have the selected field that this data set was extracted from. At the bottom, you see the result set of these particular data points. And on top, you see that this particular data set has been snapshotted for 3 weeks worth of data. So what I'd like to do here for this particular data set is to create an exception report that would contain my wine sales that are greater than $700,000 outside of Canada. So as you notice here on the right-hand side, I have the ability to create any sets of rules on these data points. So the first thing that I'd like to do, and you can see your data down below here, I'd like to focus on my product categories that is equal to wine. So I can select my different fields. We have some different criteria to extract the data. In this case, I'd like to take a look at my wine. The value will be wine. Applying those changes directly should narrow down my number of rows of data that I have to a smaller number. So in this case, going down to 32 rows of data. Then, as I mentioned, I'd like to remove Canada from this list. So I'll select where my country is not in the list, and the value that I'll select here, right here, is Canada. Narrowing down my data set a little bit further. And then, as I said, I'd like to focus on where my sales of my wine are greater than 700,000. So I'll go and see the sum of my sales amount will be greater than a value, and this value in this case would have been 700,000. Applying those changes will then give me a very narrow data set, whereas as we can see, the sum of my sales are greater than 700,000. Now, I like this data set. The only thing that since I know my data has been snapshotted on a daily basis, I do not need to show the days of my calendar date. So I'll remove this from here, apply my changes, and there we go. We have a nice resulting data set. Once I like what I have, I'll save this data set as a view. And in this case, I'll call it wine sales greater than 700,000. And I can make this view public so it's accessible to all the users that have access to this content. Once I've done that, then the next thing that I want to do is to go ahead and build a metrics or report on top of this particular view. Now, let's go build a report together. So that brings me now to my report editor. So at this point, it's our wizard is pretty straightforward. The first info tab just gives me the name of this particular report I want to save and where I want to save it. And then going to my data tab here, as you can see, the system pre-selected that data set view that we just created together as my data sources. So without anything else to do, all I need to do is to enable and publish this particular data set at this point to see my report. Since I have a snapshot of the data, I could select any data points that I have. In this case, I'll go from one day to another and update this report. And as you can see here, once we created a view, it's very easy and very simple to create any types of metrics and reports from these views. And in a few minutes, we'll take a look as to what type of report content we can add to this particular report. Also, data sets are a great way to help track changes between two instances. So going back to my data set again, the same data set. Now, in this particular example, what if I want to see the combination of country, product category, and channel that have sales that are 100% greater than the previous day? Let's see how we can do this. So instead of working with a single instance of our data, we'll now work with the last two instances of our data. So now we're on the track changes table. If a row would have been added or removed between the last two instances, I can see them. In this example, there are none, so I'll take those two off. And as I said before, I'd like to track the changes for each and every channel, country, and product category. Where, so we'll go back to creating a rules, where the current sum of my sales is greater than the prior sum of my total sales amount, either by any value, or in this case, I said more than 100%. So let's type 100 there. Now, if I applying those changes, we went from 96 rows of data to those 5 combination of channel, country, and product category, where the total sum of sales is more than double the prior one. And then you can add additional criteria, such as if I want to put where my gross profit is greater than $5,000 as well, I could add a new rule and say where my current gross profit is more than a value in this case, and we'll say $5,000. There we go. So now we have a new data set, which we'll call a change data set, and between two instances. I can again save this as a view, where I'll do my sales 100% greater than the previous day. We'll make this view public. Of course, I have to use a different name than something that already has been created. Okay, so now that we created this, the beauty about this particular change report is if I want to go back in time and take a look at the differences between, let's say, August 7th and August 6th, I can change back in time, and you'll always find a combination of channels, country, and product category where your current sum of sales is more than double the prior one. So very simple to do that. So this is how we can easily track changes between those two instances. Now let's go back to the home page and take a look at the report that we created from these views and see what additional report content we can add to these reports. The first report I'd like to open is our daily snapshot report, which is a fantastic way to take a look at your data that has been snapshotted. So we took a look at the view that was snapshotted, but the same thing for this particular data points that have been snapshotted for 3 weeks worth of data. Now, on this particular instance, if I want to select any of these row or columns or views and go see where the data was sourced for this particular dashboard into, let's say, a second business intelligence system, can click on this combination here, and that will bring me into, in this example, into Tableau with the right combination of channels, country, and product category. So the link is made directly to go from Metric Insight directly into Tableau, keeping the filter combination. Now, going back to the home page here, now what we'll take a look at is where our sales is over $700,000. So an additional type of report content that we can add here is where we have the chance to combine both the report that we created and the Tableau information onto one page, keeping all the information that you care about together. So this particular report we created before is shown here. And then if I want to go back and see where my store visits in the United States look like, if I click on this particular element, it brings me down to this particular filtered combination directly inside of Metric Insight, inside of the same location here. It's a very neat way to not have to jump between applications, but keep all your content together. The second change report that we created, which was really where our sales is more than doubled in the previous day, can go back to this particular instance here. And what we'll see here is the view of this particular report that we created. And the variation here is that we have those different lines of data that we have. And we're seeing a Tableau worksheets that are being shown to us here. And if I want to see this particular visualization, and I select, let's say, corporate sales, United Kingdom, for my accessories, I can select this. And as you'll see here, obviously the filter combination will be passed along to show the right combination of this thing. Again, giving you the same paradigm of seeing all of your data at the same location. So great. So now, going back to the home page, I'd like to show the Metric Insights mobile application. So what we're seeing on the screen here is a view of my iPhone, and we have a fantastic application that sits on both the Android and the iOS platform. And our mobile application will allow you to visualize your KPI, such as I'm doing right now, visualizing your KPI. If an alert has been generated from the previous day, you would see the alert on the screen here as well. And then you can easily peruse all of your KPI just from the comfort of your phone. The beauty about this is it also enables you for push notification. So if an alert has been generated that you want to send to your phone, you would have a push notification sent to your phone if it's an immediate alert that is urgent, and can also be pushed onto your wearable devices if you want to. So it's a one-stop shop to get all this information together. So to recap what we've looked at before today, we looked at the three pillars of the Metric Insight platform. We looked at the portal, we looked at the distribution, and we also looked at the anomaly detection / alerting side of our platform. Also, we took a look at our new data set element and how easily we can create exception and change views using our dynamic filtering capabilities, and then create reports and metrics without having to worry about the underlying data sources. And of course, we close in with taking a look at our mobile application. So if you want more information about Metric Insights, we invite you to come into our YouTube channels, Metric Insights. And also, we have the ability to sign up for a free trial of Metric Insights at metricinsights.com/trial. Last but not least, if you have any questions or comments, you can email us either at Louis@metricinsights or Adam@metricinsights. Thank you. Adam, do we have any questions?
We do. We've got a few to answer. Starting off with the simplest. What are the different deployment options for Metric Insights? We have 3 options. One of them is public cloud. So we can host for you. You can run within a private cloud. So if you have an Azure or AWS instance, you can host that internally, or you can run on-premise. In addition, we have another question. What BI tools do we support?
We support the main legacy and newer business intelligence applications such as Tableau, ClickView, MicroStrategy, Business Object, Cognos. We have an extensive list of business intelligence applications that we support. More than happy to provide our list. And also, if you go to help.metricinsights.com, you'll be able to see the full list of the connectors that we have.
We had a question about the trial. So how long is the trial for? So the trial is based on a 2-week instance. So you have 14 days from when you sign up and have been given access. All right, we've got a few more. Okay, can I white label the tool, and then are there APIs to set up and display the alerts?
There is an open API definitely in our platform that you can see and receive the alerts on. So absolutely, for that, the answer to that is yes. And white label the application as well.
Yep.
The answer is definitely yes as well.
All right. A few more here. So someone asked about the date. We mentioned Daily Digest, but can you do other time frames for reporting?
Yes, good question. So we can go down, we're showing daily digest. That was the example here. Digest can be sent on an hourly, on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. Absolutely. And also within those digests, it's possible to attach some, let's say, a PDF download of all the elements you have in your report, or a PowerPoint as well. You can create a book of elements attached to the digest.
All right. We had a question about can you send other things with the digest? Can you send PDFs? Can you send?
There you go. Yes, the answer is definitely yes.
Okay. Let's see. Do I need to get designer or server or both for metric insights? So I think he's asking which version you need to be able to use metric insights. And so the answer is we only have one version. Metric Insights is a web-based application. And so everything is done via the web portal. All right. And then we had a question about there was restricted access for data sets. You mentioned the different groups that can access content. Is that only for data sets?
No, for all the content that you have within Metric Insights. So when I was talking about the home page here as an example, not only users will have access to specific categories, such as the user was giving the example of sales and marketing, so you can restrict the users to specific categories of data, but within those categories as well, they can have access to only dimensional views of the data. So someone responsible for Germany would only see the tile throughout the application that represents Germany only.
We had a question, can you provide docs? I believe it was in reference to the API and the white labeling. If that's the case, we have two spots where you can get information. Those two spots we will show you is help.metricinsights.com. And then we also have knowledgebase.metricinsights.com or kb.metricinsights.com. All right. Let's see. And I believe that is, wait, we have some more. There we go. Metric Insights, can it be standalone or do you have to have Tableau to use Metric Insights? Metric Insights is a standalone product. So we're a platform where you can build content, build the metrics, build these reports. We just connect into other BI tools to allow users to access them if you have them. So you can use Metric Insights by itself.
Yes, this is meant. It's a very good point here. We do not necessarily require another business intelligence application. It's just to show you in full course on the paradigm that most customers may have more than one solution in-house, and Metric Insight can build on your existing solution, but are not required.
All right. I believe that is all the questions that we've received, unless there are any others. Oh. We have a question about licensing. So generally speaking, we license per user or per core. And if you'd like more details, please email me, adam@metricinsights.com, and we can discuss. All right. Oh, here's another one. How do you install Metric Insights? So what does a implementation look like for our product?
So Metric Insight, as we said before, can be on-premise or in the cloud. So once you install Metric Insights, we are a Linux-based platform that can be installed on Red Hat's Linux, or also be installed within the content of an OVA file in virtualized environment. That's for the on-premise deployment. And in the cloud, of course, it's in the cloud. So. And then all we need to do is to establish the connection to your data sources, may that be relational, Hadoop, or even other third-party systems.
All right. So we had a question, Alteryx versus Metric Insights and the different advantages. So Alteryx, for those that don't know on the webinar, is a ETL platform. So it helps you take data and transform it from different tools and sources and create usable data sets. And then metric insights. So the difference between Alteryx and metric insights is that Alteryx is a ETL tool. It specifically focuses on the transformation of data sets or data from different tools. Metric insights is what I like to call the last mile of business intelligence. So if you look at all those other tools that you have, right? If you look at Alteryx, if you look at Tableau, if you look at Click, all those different items, that's like the fiber optic cable in a city. They all transfer data, they all transfer information, but how do you get your end users to actually consume that information? There's so much out there. Metric insights is that last mile from the fiber optic cable to the end user's house. So Alteryx is the fiber optic cable, helps get the data, that helps modify and clean up the data. Metric insights is the delivery mechanism. So I would, metric insights can be used from very light ETL work.
And I would add to this that Alteryx can provide and allow us to load data sets into metric insight, and for us to take on those 3 layers that we talked about, the portal distribution and then the anomaly detection on our platform.
Okay. Any other questions? I know it's a little slower to type than to ask them out loud. Okay. So with that, please feel free to email Louis or I if you have any other questions that you think of after the presentation is complete. And we will answer any questions that are remaining in the chat via email. So thank you for joining the Metric Insights webinar, version 5.0 release. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you.